Cristiano Ronaldo's story isn't just the rise of a footballer, it's the birth of a corporation. From the moment he stepped onto a professional pitch, something felt different. His speed, his hunger, his obsession. Yes, those were extraordinary. But what truly set him apart wasn't the way he played, it was the way he presented himself. Even as a teenager, Ronaldo didn't simply perform, he performed for an audience. Every step over, every celebration, every glance at the camera carried the same message: remember me. While most players tried to prove themselves on the field, Ronaldo was proving something else: marketability. He understood, long before the rest of the world, that football was entering a new era, an era where fame wasn't earned solely through trophies, but through visibility. The bigger the spotlight, the bigger the influence. And Ronaldo didn't run from that spotlight. He chased it, he shaped it, he owned it. At Manchester United, he wasn't just developing into a world-class winger, he was crafting an identity. The hairstyle, the posture, the body language, the iconic celebrations, these weren't random choices, they were building blocks, branding elements, the early foundations of a global empire. And Nike saw it immediately. They didn't just look at the number on his back, they looked at the letters in his name, 3 characters that would soon become bigger than the man himself. CR7, a logo disguised as a nickname, a brand disguised as a player, a myth disguised as a man. This wasn't just a football career anymore, this was the launch of a product, a premium, global, unstoppable product. Before we go any deeper into how Ronaldo transformed from athlete to brand, take a moment, subscribe, like, and tell me. Do you think greatness is built or manufactured? Ronaldo didn't become a brand by accident. He became one because he understood something most athletes never realize. Talent creates opportunity, but identity creates value. When he arrived at Real Madrid in 2009, he wasn't just joining the biggest football club in the world, he was entering the perfect ecosystem for global myth-making. Madrid wasn't a team, it was a stage, a cathedral built for icons. And Ronaldo walked in not as a player trying to prove himself, but as a product ready to scale. Every goal, every celebration, every headline crafted the same narrative: CR7 is inevitable, CR7 is power, CR7 is perfection. The moment he struck that iconic pose, chest out, arms wide, feet grounded like a statue carved from ambition, it became more than a celebration. It became branding, a universal silhouette recognized from Tokyo to Los Angeles, and behind the scenes the machinery kept expanding. Nike pushed the logo, Real Madrid pushed the myth, sponsors pushed the image, Ronaldo pushed himself, harder than anyone else. This was the moment he stopped being just a footballer. He became a symbol of human optimization, a billboard for discipline, control, obsession. To millions, he wasn't a man, he was a template. And as the world watched him evolve, they didn't just admire his talent, they bought into his identity. They bought shoes, shirts, fragrances, underwear, hotels, entire industries orbiting around a 3-letter brand. By the mid-2010s, CR7 wasn't following football. Football was following him. Leagues, broadcasters, marketing campaigns all rearranged themselves around his gravitational pull. By the time Ronaldo reached his peak, CR7 was no longer a personal brand. It was a corporate engine, polished, efficient, and meticulously constructed. Behind every goal, every photo, every interview, there was strategy. Not spontaneous emotion, strategy. Because Ronaldo understood something fundamental about modern fame. You don't rise by being talented, you rise by being unavoidable. And CR7 became unavoidable. His team grew from a handful of advisors into a fully structured operation. Media consultants, marketing directors, image strategists, fitness analysts, brand architects. They didn't manage a player, they managed a global asset. Every haircut, a statement. Every Instagram post, a calculated move in a billion-dollar attention economy. Every transfer decision, a commercial domino effect that shifted markets. This wasn't vanity, it was infrastructure. Ronaldo's body itself became part of the brand, sculpted, photographed, packaged. His celebrations were trademarked, his signature free-kick stance was studied like an ad campaign. His diet, his sleep routine, his training clips, all transformed into content, into mythology. And then came the true breakthrough: social media. While other players posted casually, Ronaldo built an empire. He didn't just share his life, he curated it. He crafted a visual universe where he was always the protagonist, where success wasn't occasional, it was perpetual. CR7 became the most followed athlete in human history, more powerful than clubs, leagues, even nations in terms of reach. At this point, Ronaldo wasn't a brand next to football, he was a brand above football. And that is when everything changed, because once a player becomes bigger than the sport can no longer contain him. There comes a moment in every superstar's life when the brand becomes heavier than the body carrying it. For Cristiano Ronaldo, that moment arrived long before most people realized. The exact second CR7 stopped reflecting the player and started defining him. When Juventus signed Ronaldo in 2018, they didn't buy a footballer, they bought an economy. Shirt sales exploded, stock prices spiked, sponsors poured in before he even touched the ball. The club's marketing output became a shrine to one man, not the badge, not the team, the brand. And suddenly, every match carried two scorelines, the result on the pitch and the result on Ronaldo's global image. If he scored, the brand soared. If he didn't, the narrative shifted, the spotlight tightened. The expectations grew louder than the stadium itself. This is the paradox CR7 created. The more legendary his brand became, the less human the player beneath it was allowed to be. In Manchester United, this tension became impossible to hide. Every gesture, every substitution, every frustrated look wasn't just football, it was content. Clipped, shared, interpreted, monetized. A global audience didn't watch Ronaldo play, they watched CR7 perform. Even his move to Al Nassr proved it. It wasn't a transfer, it was a global event engineered to shift the gravitational center of football eastward. He didn't join a league, he validated one. Because at that point, Ronaldo's value wasn't measured in goals, it was measured in influence, in reach, in cultural impact, in the transformation of entire football markets with a single signature. CR7 had become something football could no longer contain, a self-sustaining universe whose orbit pulled clubs, leagues, brands, and nations with it. But there's a cost to becoming a myth. The world stops judging you as a player and starts judging you as a symbol. To understand why Ronaldo became a brand, you must understand the psychology that built him. Because CR7 wasn't crafted by marketers, it was crafted by a mindset that refuses to exist without greatness. From a young age, he learned that attention was currency. The more he earned, the more control he gained. And control became his survival mechanism. His ego wasn't arrogance, it was armor, a shield forged from years of being judged for his body, his style, his origins, his ambition. The CR7 brand became a psychological sanctuary, a place where he could guarantee the respect reality didn't always offer. But this pursuit of perfection had a side effect. When the myth became global, Ronaldo could no longer simply be a footballer. He had to be the version the world demanded, the machine, the leader, the icon, the flawless example of discipline. And any deviation from that image, a bad game, a missed chance, a single moment of vulnerability, felt like failure, not sporting failure, identity failure. So he doubled down. More training hours, more control over his diet, his appearance, his media presence. Even his public smiles became curated, a reminder that CR7 was always composed, always strong, always in command. Because the greatest fear of a brand is not defeat, it is irrelevance. This is why Ronaldo fights time with the same intensity he once fought defenders, not because he refuses to age, but because CR7 cannot afford to. At its core, his transformation into a brand wasn't just business, it was psychological self-preservation. And that's the paradox. The world crowned him a symbol of perfection, without realizing perfection was the one thing he could never escape. When Ronaldo moved, markets moved with him. His transfer to Juventus added nearly $300 million in market value to the club within days. A single announcement triggered surges in stock price, website traffic, ticket sales, and global broadcasting interest. The Italian league, once fading behind the Premier League and La Liga, suddenly felt relevant again. Broadcasters changed their programming. Brands rewrote entire campaigns. Leagues adjusted kickoff times for Asian and American audiences hungry for CR7 coverage. This wasn't fandom, this was economics. Because Ronaldo represents something every corporation, every football institution, and every emerging market desires: instant global legitimacy. When he speaks, millions listen. When he switches clubs, the cultural axis of football tilts. When he posts, entire marketing cycles react. Even at Al Nassr, the pattern repeated. His arrival transformed the Saudi Pro League from an obscurity into a global spectacle overnight. Not because of the league's history or quality, but because a single brand, CR7, planted its flag there. European clubs began arranging mid-season friendlies. This was the power of becoming more than a player. Ronaldo wasn't joining leagues anymore, he was validating them. And what does that tell us? That CR7 is not constrained by national borders or club hierarchies. He operates in an entirely different arena, the arena of global attention, where players compete for trophies, but brands compete for influence. And Ronaldo, long before anyone else realized it, chose influence, because influence scales, influence compounds, influence outlives goals, age, and even legacy. Clubs can bench you, leagues can fade, but a brand can exist everywhere, all at once. If football built Ronaldo's reputation, social media turned him into infrastructure, a global network. a real-time broadcasting system more powerful than clubs, journalists, or entire leagues. Because Ronaldo was the first athlete to understand that in the digital age, attention is the real currency, and he had more of it than anyone else alive. This is the real turning point. Ronaldo no longer needed football to remain relevant. Football needed him, needed his platform, his audience, his gravitational pull. Because Ronaldo had proven a truth no player before him had mastered. A footballer's value isn't measured in goals or assists, but in influence. In the digital era, you don't have to be the best on the pitch, you only have to be the most watched. And Ronaldo was, and still is, the most watched athlete on the planet. There is a hidden cost to becoming a global brand. A cost Cristiano Ronaldo has paid more visibly than anyone. Because when the world stops seeing you as a player, and starts seeing you as a symbol, something subtle but irreversible happens. You lose the right to be ordinary. Every touch, every reaction, every word becomes content. Not moments, metrics, not emotions, expectations. When Ronaldo celebrated, he was accused of ego. When he showed frustration, he was called toxic. When he aged, as every human must, the world treated it like betrayal. That is the paradox of CR7. He built a brand so powerful that it outgrew the man behind it. And once a myth becomes global, the myth must always win, even if the human underneath cannot. His late career years showed this more clearly than anything. It wasn't just about football anymore. It was about protecting a legacy, defending an identity, maintaining an empire that millions depended on. Brands, clubs, sponsors, markets. He wasn't playing for himself. He was playing for CR7, the billion-dollar ecosystem. And yet, behind all of this, the fame, the pressure, the perfection, lies the most human truth. Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro is still the kid from Madeira who wanted to prove he mattered. He succeeded, beyond imagination, but in doing so, he traded something he can never reclaim, the freedom to simply be a footballer. Because legends retire, players age, careers fade. Brands don't get to disappear, they must endure, they must stay relevant, they must keep performing, even when the human behind the logo is tired. That is the real cost of becoming CR7, a legacy unmatched, and a burden only he must carry. Subscribe, like, and tell me, was Ronaldo ever just a player?